Hi, it's Lloyd with Perfect Crust Pizza Liners and Incredible Bags, joined today by the one and only World Pizza Champion, John Arena, Metro Pizza. To the majority of pizza people in the pizza industry, John needs no introduction. Super thrilled that you're joining us. Hi, John, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's always a great opportunity to speak with you, Lloyd. I love exchanging ideas with you.
Thanks. And to clarify, because John asked a question, this is not a picture of my backyard. That's a stolen picture from Mariforni ovens. I told him I was using it as my Zoom background because the picture makes me happy. So let's talk about the topic that we have for today. And that's basically, you had a Facebook post talking about an interaction that you saw online, kind of internet influencer that's very famous, has millions of followers and big footprint in social media, had an interaction with Jonathan Goldsmith of Spacca, Napoli. And to be real honest, we're not going to focus very much on the influencer today, but kind of on the opportunity that it represented for Jonathan and kind of what it takes to be a good pizza ambassador in general.
Great. I think we use the term pizza ambassador sometimes, and if we really think about being an ambassador, ambassadors have to go not just to our allies. They have to sometimes go into hostile territory, or go in. They sometimes they're assigned to posts or missions that are challenging. So to be a good ambassador, you can't just preach to the choir. You also have to see yourself as an emissary of whatever your culture you're representing, whether it's a country or a craft. And Jonathan takes that very seriously. I think that's what we all love about Jonathan, is that he's so fully immersed in the culture.
Yeah.
And sometimes he's kind of like.
I just wanted to read something real quick from the Chicago Tribune, and that's part of what's so funny about this interaction is, like, of all people, Jonathan Goldsmith, right? Like pizza artistry. So when Tony Gemignani's slogan, "Respect the craft," comes up, I mean, Jonathan Goldsmith is that embodied. So in the Chicago Tribune, there's a quote from Jonathan Goldsmith talking about how he's never finished learning and he's been doing this for 12 years or more. Because my interest is the same as it was in the beginning. I'm still asking the same questions I was 12 years ago. What's the best cheese? What's the best flour? During the Renaissance, artists entered the guild. They spent years learning about the brushes or laying out pigments. It's only after a lifetime you become a master when you're 60 or 70. We don't know everything, and that keeps us going. And that is Jonathan Goldsmith in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And what's great about Jonathan is that he's so eager to share whatever he's learned along the way and continue to grow, but also help other people to continue to grow. So for him, it's not about how many followers do you have. If you have 1 million followers, I'll go out on the street and talk to you about pizza. It's just a person that he thinks he could share some useful information with.
Right. Yeah. And I mentioned earlier that it's not about the particular pizza reviewer that was involved in this case. It's interesting because, I mean, you can have millions of followers or you can have a few, but everybody thinks they can review pizza and have a rating system, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think these interactions become more and more common for every pizza maker. And from that standpoint, I'm happy to talk with you about what that's like. There's a bunch of different ways that this interaction could have gone. And basically what Jonathan did was to kind of create it as an opportunity to educate. And I recommend that people kind of watch that interview to see how it went and how he responded. In talking with you, we kind of laughed because it's sort of like Jonathan would have used the same opportunity to educate. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter to him who that person was. No. It was just more about the love of pizza.
He probably was oblivious to who that person was. But I think there's so many important lessons to be learned there. And it was such a great example of how to handle those situations. My first impulse when I started to watch that video was, how dare you go into Jonathan's place not knowing who he is? Can't you at least do a Google search before you walk in the door? How dare you review Neapolitan pizza without knowing how to pronounce the word Napoli? It was, I was kind of outraged at first.
Yeah.
And then I said, wait a minute, this doesn't do any good.
Yes. Yeah.
Be more like Jonathan. Just look at it. Where's the opportunity here? If the person doesn't know or fully appreciate Neapolitan pizza, now's my chance to explain it to him. And Jonathan took that, and we all need to learn from that. I had a conversation with Chris Bianco once about people that come to his place with certain expectations.
Mhm.
And the way he described it is armed with expectations or armed with a preconceived notion. And he said, and my job is to disarm them. And if I can disarm them in here, maybe I can disarm the world.
Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
great way of looking at it. I mean, in this particular, so the format is, the pizza reviewers outside, reviews the pizza, and there's actually a point at which Jonathan comes out to interact with them and talk about eating pizza in Naples, kind of in the street style of folding it, and totally new to the reviewer. And
Right, which is particularly interesting because that reviewer, his whole premise is based on one bite, and basically the idea that one bite tells the whole story, which as professional pizza makers, people in our industry, we know that one bite does not tell the whole story.
yes,
And Jonathan illustrated that, and the guy accidentally admitted to that because as he was eating the portfolio, he was experiencing different things as he bit into it, as he progressed in the eating of that pizza, that clearly demonstrated that one bite does not do the whole job.
yeah,
Because each bite is unique.
right at the end, he basically admits, like, yeah, I kind of get it. It's different. I've never seen this before.
Right. First I bit into the bread, then I tasted the sauce, then I tasted the cheese, I tasted the combination of ingredients. So one bite does not do it all.
Yeah.
One bite and that's it is not really valid. And that's probably a little frustrating to most professional pizza makers when they see a review like that. As powerful as that guy's platform is, it doesn't tell the whole story. But how do we get that message across unless we interact? We can't cancel that guy. We can't disregard him. That's not useful for anybody. I think the pandemic should have taught us that it's important to reach out to people.
Yeah,
No
totally.
Not just the fans, not just the acolytes, not just the aficionados or the semi-professionals or the customers, but anybody who's interested in pizza. We can be that ambassador. We can be a diplomat. Some of us get to be Secretary of State like Tony Gemignani, and some of us get to be mid-level bureaucrats that are just representatives, de facto representatives.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's kind of when I think about, I don't want to speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. When I think about the people, whether they're pizza makers or like, I'm not a pizza maker, I'm in an adjacent industry, part of the industry. And, but when we see people that we think we have a lot in common with, commonly what that is people that are curious and want to kind of expand their knowledge. That's why people appreciate Scott Wiener, right? I mean, his vast encyclopedic knowledge of the history, and there's so many different, to look at the pizza Bible over your shoulder. There's all the different regional styles, and I mean, to take somebody like Tony Gemignani, I don't think he thinks that he knows there's everything to know about pizza, and so that's
absolutely.
I think that's what's interesting about the reviewer mentality is, to me, rating and reviewing pizzas tell you what I like, and it may not be what you like, or it may just be what I know and like. And from that standpoint, it's kind of funny. And what I really like about Tony Gemignani, among many things, just a super humble guy. But the respect to craft part that I really like instantly connected with Tony about that slogan was like, say I was a really appreciated fine woodworking, okay? But my thing is that the type of fine woodworking that I really, really like is kitchen counters. That's my thing. And I just like, I'm a fan, and everywhere in America that I go, I'm looking for beautiful woodwork kitchen counters. If somebody does great woodworking and it's a coffee table, it's not like, it's not a great coffee table because I'm into kitchen counters. And the respect the craft part that I like is it respects the craft entirely. So to me, that's what really struck home.
Right. And I think that's something that many of the reviewers don't get. And when, by the nature of what they do, they can't, they have to have a viewpoint and present themselves as being experts. But right now, there's no excuse. If you're going to be a reviewer of any credibility, there's no excuse for not having knowledge, because the knowledge is so available, so accessible. You can experience, you go to any major city and you can experience good examples of just about every major style that's being practiced in the United States within a small radius. So it's not like these things are inaccessible anymore. It's not like information is inaccessible.
And
What I don't like is lazy journalism, where people just do a Google search of the best pizzerias in town, and they're just not actually visiting any of them, and then they're writing a top 10 list or a best list. The notion of best, as we know, is ridiculous.
right.
Best should really be what it really should be is my favorites.
Right.
And in many cases, people are writing best lists of places that they've never been to.
Yeah.
That most of these people are, if they're based in New York or based in LA, they're not venturing out of those metropolitan areas, and they're passing judgment on pizzerias in Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you know? How do you know that and we see it, that Instagram mentality, that a very superficial exposure, people presume that they have in-depth knowledge, and they really don't. They'll call somebody a maestro because they saw their pizza on an Instagram post. They haven't eaten the pizza, they haven't met the person, they haven't had a conversation with the person, but they're a maestro because they take a good photograph.
Yeah, and that's, I think, part of why I resist the whole idea of ratings. Is I tend to think that's A, not useful, and B, the kind of my favorite pizzas, is for me that it's almost more, I'm better off thinking it as the pizza I would love to have right now, and that can change by lunchtime. So that's kind of how I approach it. You obviously have interacted, influenced, so many wonderful pizza makers. And I wonder to what degree that you get the effect of like a musician that has recorded, a hit and been, famous for a particular song, and people know that for you. You do a concert, the song is great, and it's really been very good to you and made a lot of money. But at the same time, it's kind of like you've been touring for 10 years, 15 years now, and it's maybe you've evolved musically, and you understand that was a pop hit, but that's not what interests you now. I see that as something that can be maybe kind of sort of shackling to somebody, but on the other hand, maybe not, because I can think of people that are able to do both, and certainly, your shop, with Metro Pizza and Chris Decker. I mean, his creativity just in making different, unique flavor combinations is just really, really fun. It seems like he's able to kind of do that, of say, okay, we're going to play the hits, but we're gonna be creative and artistic too.
It's a challenge, and there's a balance there, because for a certain set of customers, there's a particular expectation. There's a certain group of, especially when you've been in business for as long as we have. I've got customers that have been coming to me for 40 years. I was talking to a customer the other day who worked for us when she was 16 years old, and she now has 9 grandchildren.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
That gives you an idea of how long I've been around. So that customer, when they walk in, they're expecting a certain thing from Metro Pizza.
Yeah.
And the trick for us is to use that as an entry point, and then bring them beyond that in a way that's that they're comfortable with and that they can understand. And I'm grateful that they love what we did in 1980.
Mhm.
But I also want them to experience what we can do in 2021 and beyond.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just a time capsule.
Right.
And I don't, you know, and it's great that they have that loyalty. But my intention was not to build a museum.
Yes, exactly. I
My
love it.
intention is to build a laboratory
Yeah.
that takes us further. So there is definitely a challenge there, and I think you have to handle it delicately and respectfully, like any part of the hospitality business. You have to acknowledge the expectations of the customer, and then you can kind of see it as, your core pizzas are an entry point, and then you can try to do your best to move them from there in a graceful way.
Yeah, and to
And
kind of loop it back to where we started in terms of being a pizza ambassador, I think that's the people who do it well do it with such a deft touch, and kind of what Jonathan did is he's able to, and maybe this is his background in academia and clinical social work, of kind of looking at where the person that he's interacting is with, and not putting them down for their level of knowledge, but exposing them to something new.
right, I'm a big music fan, and I particularly like Van Morrison. And for years, Van Morrison would not famously refuse to play Brown Eyed Girl in concert.
Uh,
He basically hated the song, but it was a song that put him on the map.
right.
And the last time I went to see him here in Las Vegas, about 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, he did Brown Eyed Girl as the closer. So he had made peace with it, and he knew that it was something that was beloved by his fans, and he had matured to the point where he could appreciate that,
Yeah.
and had finally resigned himself to giving them what they want, but doing a slightly different version of it. A
Yeah.
version that was not so detached from what the expectation was, that it was challenging, but that acknowledged and respected people's affection for it. And I think we have to do that with our pizza too. If our pizza is so radical that nobody can relate to it, you can't save souls in an empty church.
Right.
First you bring them in.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and maybe on both sides, for the reviewers or influencers as well as for the restaurant owners and pizza makers. It's like, if you're, I mean, any pizza maker could have had that same situation of someone coming in and saying, it's not my style, so I'm going to rate it X. And they could have come in and said, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And been real heated
Would that have been
and dogmatic. Right, yes, yeah.
Might have made good TV,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't have been productive. So instead, why don't we approach, if somebody says to you, I don't like Neapolitan pizza, maybe you say, I like New York pizza instead. Well, maybe you show them or demonstrate to them how Neapolitan pizza evolved into New York style pizza.
Right.
You learn more from embracing the, it's the same with our personal interactions. You learn more from starting from a standpoint of, let's see what we have in common first.
Yes.
Look for the similarities, not the differences.
Yes.
And then you can build on those similarities and explore the differences and how they evolved. But your world is enlarged by first finding that common ground.
Yes. Yeah. No, and that's what I loved about your post is that, kind of like you had an initial reaction, but then kind of in focusing on what we could take from it, and what it means to be ambassadors for the industry was a nice moment.
And I thought that the critic himself also refrained from being confrontational as well.
Yeah.
He said, well, I like that guy.
Yeah.
To me, it was insulting that he didn't know who that guy was, because to me, that's like going to Yankee Stadium and saying, oh, that Mickey Mantle guy looks pretty good. Who is he? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, fair point. Absolutely. That's pretty funny.
But
when
once
you
I
put
got
it
past that, I saw that there was this really nice interaction and this moment where the guy maybe changed his opinion a little bit. And the next time he goes to a Neapolitan pizzeria, he will look at it from a different perspective.
Yes,
That's the most that we can hope for.
right.
Not going to have this moment of complete conversion. But if you can get people to start to think about it, Pete LaChapelle always says, think about pizza. If we can get people to think about it, then we can start to move them in another direction. We can come to an understanding. You're still going to have your favorites. You have your favorites. I have my favorites. That's okay. But if we can just get people to understand it, I have a friend in another field who he never says that he doesn't like something. He says, I haven't learned to appreciate it yet.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And I think that's true of, that's true, certainly true about pizza. If you don't know anything about it, maybe and you say you don't like it, maybe you just haven't learned to appreciate it yet.
Right, right. Well, that's a great learning point for me and something I'm going to take and use moving forward. We certainly appreciate you, John. I know you're a busy guy, but glad that you were able to join us and kind of just extrapolate on what you mentioned in the post. As always, really, really appreciate your views. Is there anything else that you want to finish with?
Just that I think it's important that we reach out, not just to our friends, but to the people that we haven't learned to appreciate yet.
Right. Yeah. No. And I think one of your early statements about the State Department doesn't just to get to talk to allies. It has to talk with all views, and that's a great way to think of it. All right. Well, we appreciate you very much, John. I want to thank you so much for your time.
Great to see you.
Yeah. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thanks. Peace.